Okay, so your friend just told you about this awesome cool website called V-Ray Materials where you can get all kinds of cool textures already made for you. And you went on V-Ray Materials and the first thing you got is this texture because they look real cool. But whenever you went to the material, get material, and you opened the material library that you got off V-Ray Materials, well, what happens? You open up that break.mat and the first thing you see is nada. What happened? Well, one thing that I think happened right now is that I'm set to the Mental Ray render engine, so I'm gonna switch over to the V-Ray render engine. But hey, what do you guys notice there? If you don't have the right render engine, you are not gonna see anything. So that's the first thing you guys need to know. Unless you have the specific render engine, this material library is going to appear blank, but really there is a hidden material there. And some of you guys might be thinking, but hey, I don't have V-Ray. What do I do if I don't have V-Ray? Well, if you look at the folder in which you have your material, you have the basics to create your own material. So if you just opened up a material library, you guys are going to need a diffuse map, so you're going to have to tell 3ds Max your diffuse map is here because it doesn't know where it is, because before it thought it was somewhere on the H drive, ch/texture. So the first thing you need to do is tell 3ds Max where all these maps that it needs are. And once you tell that to 3ds Max, now you're going to be able to see changes happening in the little icon. And what do we do after we populate the locations of where all the assets of this material library is? Well, you just apply the texture and hit render. You might need to do a little bit of tuning, which I'm going to get to that in a moment. And I'm going to drop the render engine because Mental Ray is a lot faster for this specific situation anyways. Now that I told 3ds Max where all these objects are at, you can create a shape to have the material applied to. Hit this little icon to show this in the viewport. And hey, what's going on? I'm on a sub-object level, so I'm gonna go up one level and hit view. And now it's looking good. I'm gonna create a camera, T, top, C, camera. Gonna make this a 24mm camera, and now I can hit render, and this texture is gonna look pretty good. It's gonna look just as good as this one right here because I already told 3ds Max where everything is, and someone already tweaked these material assets for me, so it's gonna look very nice. So now for the guys that are thinking, hey, but I don't have V-Ray. Well, if you don't have V-Ray, you don't need it. You have the basics to create your own map. So if I go to my render engine and I pick whatever I got, I'm going to hit the Arc and Design key to create a new standard map. And if you see right here, you can specify a diffuse map. I'm going to specify a diffuse with the bitmap type. And once I click on bitmap, I'm going to navigate to the location of my diffuse map, which is going to be the texture of the bricks that's in color. After that, I'm going to tell 3ds Max where the specular map and where the bump map is at. And once I got that set, that's it. I just do the same thing. I click and drag and apply the material into the scene, and then I hit render. And that's basically how you create a material. So bitmap, I'm gonna tell the render engine that I messed up right now. I'm gonna tell the render engine that my texture, my diffuse map is right there. My specular is gonna be a bitmap, and it's this one. No, that's the bump. This is the specular. And further down is where I got my bump map. I'm gonna activate it, and then I'm gonna specify it as a bitmap. Click my bump image, and then if I click and drag and show this in the viewport, let's do a few different renders. I'm gonna click on show save frames to see exactly what it is that I'm gonna render. And if I hit render right now, this map looks very boring. Why is that? Well, I unchecked the bump map, so now I'm gonna render a region to show you what a bump map does to the quality of the render. Check on bump and then hit render, and look at that, now you have texture. So you see the difference that a bump map made? I'm gonna change the specular to the reflection. I'm gonna swap these out, and now I'm gonna re-render. I think this map is gonna do better on the reflective side than it is on the specular side. Not much of a difference, but you may notice it if you got a sharp eye. I think it actually does look better. Now I'm just gonna do a full view render, and this texture is looking very good. One more thing I can do, if my bump of 30 isn't enough, I can bump this up a lot. I'm just gonna bump it up to 600 for emphasis, and it's not gonna look too good now. You want to be conservative on the bump, and don't go so high up. Don't go any higher than you need it. I think I might be good by just doing a 60. And if you look at this little icon right here, this icon shows you what's going on, and 60 is still too high. I think I'll just leave it at the original 30. This is just telling me that I'm missing a material map and that I cannot show V-Ray materials on the Mental Ray render engine, but I don't need it. I'm gonna hit X to reset it to the default values. Or yeah, I'll just leave it that way anyways. That's the final map. It looks good. At least I think that, and that's how I create a material in 3ds Max. Diffuse, bump, specular, reflective. 4 things that are typically needed. Now if you hit M and then hit get material, you might have a material library that has like 300 or 400 different materials, and like this one right here, I have a brick.mat. I'm gonna close this one because that one's the V-Ray, but I need to make one to manage my new materials, so I'm going to create a new material library. I'm gonna save it wherever I want, somewhere where it's gonna be safe, and now I can add these materials to my material library. Now you see the little star that appeared? This little star tells you that, hey, you haven't saved your work. And something that's good about 3ds Max is that if you try leaving without saving your material library, it tells you, hey Genius, you forgot to save your new material library. Oh, I did. I better go back and save it. So if you right click and hit save, that little star disappear, the asterisk disappear, and now you can close 3ds Max knowing that the next time you open it, you're still going to have your material libraries. And now what you guys can do is just click and drag all your different materials, concrete, whatever, and whenever you're done, just hit save. if you want to share this material library with your friends because you created like 15 awesome materials, you need to share with him the new new library .mat, and you also need to share to him the individual maps that each material requires. So if I have 15 different textures, I in theory would have 15 different diffuse maps, maybe 15 different specular maps, and maybe 15 different bump maps. And all of that needs to go to your friend with the new library.mat, because if I just send them this little 32 kilobyte file, you cannot put all these high quality textures and samples in 32 kilobytes. So you need to send all this right here in a .rar archive something somewhere. Long story short, all of this needs to go out, because if you just send him this, whenever he opens it, the only thing he's gonna see is a blank little circle like this, because it has no diffuse, no bump, nada. It doesn't have the assets it needs. And even if you do send the assets, he's gonna have to tell 3ds Max where these individual files are. So he's gonna have to click and tell 3ds Max where all these single files are at. But once he does that, he's gonna get the same results that you got, and because you send him the MAT, if you have these tweaked to your liking, then he doesn't need to make any kind of tweaking, because all of these settings are already preset for him, and he doesn't need to do anything. He just has to bring this in, and if you made changes to the reflectiveness, all of this, he is going to have all of those settings already available to him. He doesn't need to do anything else, because all of that went with the .mat file. I'm just gonna hit render to show if this material got any more reflective than it was already. But what have we covered so far? We covered how to create new materials. We also covered the 3 and 4 basic maps that we need to create a material in the Mental Ray render engine, and you can do the same thing with the V-Ray render engine. And the other thing we covered is the management of your library. You can create a new material library and click and drag all your 50 different materials, and then save that library and email it to your friend with all the different texture and assets that are needed for each individual material. Then all your friend has to do is, of course, specify the location of all those assets. You guys, girls, if y'all have any questions, just find me somewhere on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Raudel something like that. Message me through YouTube, find me on Google Plus, Twitter. If you guys need help, just contact me. I'll help y'all out through LogMeIn, TeamViewer. I'll do it. I don't mind. If you're stumped on something, I can help you out. So, should anyone need it, just give me a call. Well, not a call, a quick message. And if somehow you manage to get my phone number, well, I'll help you.